Agricola Family Edition is a 1 to 4 player worker placement game for ages 8 and up by Mayfair Games. Agricola Family Edition takes off where Agricola also took off. Basically, what you're doing is you're doing a worker placement game where you start off with your little tile here. Instead of getting a main board, you just get a single tile. It's much more modular than the regular Agricola game. And you start off with your 2 basic pawns again. What you do is on your turn, you place them in any of the locations you see here. You again have the same resources of reed, wood, clay, sheep, pigs, cows, but however, you are missing stone this time around. And you place your pawn here, you place it in a location, you grab a reed, and you put it off to the side. Over time, this pawn here slowly moves around, giving you more options. In the first round, you start off with this stack of tiles. You're able to take the top one for the costs written on the upper right-hand corner, and then you would place it down next to your building here. Just like the main game, you can upgrade from a wooden building to a clay building. There is no stone buildings, as there's no stone in this game. You're also able to add rooms. So round 2, you can see here that there is, for 5 wood and 2 reed, you can purchase an additional room. And then upgrade that as well in round 4. And as this guy goes around, you can see that he runs into a harvest right here. Harvest, just like the regular Agricola game, means that you have to pay for your people. The game eventually ends in round 14, just like Agricola, where the most number of points wins the game. This game plays a solo player variant, as well as all the way up to 4 players. This game is much more streamlined than the original Agricola. And most points wins.
Hello and welcome back to Gamers Remorse. Today we're checking out Agricola Family Edition by Mayfair Games and Lookout Spiel. In regards to gameplay, I mean, it's basically a streamlined version of Agricola. Mm-hmm. They got rid of
the minor
the minor improvements, the occupations, some of the fiddly bits of the cards. You still have to feed your people, right? That remains a prevalent portion of this game. But that's kind of what drives the game, right? Yeah. Is every time you're worrying about, can I feed my people? I can't build a massive family and not feed them. That would be bad. But other than that, gameplay, it seemed about the same game. It's just they took a smaller viewpoint on the components. It's actually the same components now that I look at it. Yeah. All the same animeeples and whatever, but just a smaller board, much smaller, and instead of having each player having their own centralized board, you just build based on attaching tiles together. Yeah. What were some of your favorite parts about the gameplay in this, Brian?
Yeah, I did like the modular nature of the board. I enjoyed being able to place things wherever I wanted. Just felt a lot more, I don't want to say free than having that set grid. Mm-hmm. But I didn't feel like, I have to fill spaces, and that's an aspect of making it more child-friendly as well, is you don't lose points for not filling in things. Mm-hmm. But I just enjoyed it, I can make a really wide farm, or I can make a really long farm, or I can make a hole in the middle of my farm. I enjoyed playing with that aspect of things, personally.
Mm-hmm. And one thing you did comment on was the Kalis-like pawn showing the series of time. It still is about the same to the base game Agricola, but instead of flipping over cards and some randomization, it's always the same, and this pawn is really just showing you the steps in time. Yep. But it is Kalis-like, because it's like, well, here are future things, but you can't build those yet.
Yep. And they don't change, so each game will be the same. Yep. Whereas in Agricola, you can shuffle those cards up, and you can have some variance in that.
I do wonder, though, if a variant would be... Or did you just say that? We could shuffle these up?
No, in the core game, you can shuffle them up.
Yeah. But I think even in this game, you could technically...
I mean, technically, there's a number on the back.
Yeah, but you could just say I'm not into that. I don't know. Anyway, Eric, what did you think? Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I mean, it very much did play like Agricola. once again, Agricola being my favorite game thus far. It did feel very streamlined. I think that the eliminating of the occupations, the minor improvements, the vegetables in the fields, certain things like that, the points being deducted for not having certain things definitely made it a lot quicker for deciding okay, well, I don't need this now. I don't have to have these things, so it was easier just to kind of pick up on one thing to just kind of focus on.
And I have to wonder if that's where the genesis of this came from. Is what about a simpler game that you could teach to newer players, and once they got to a certain threshold, move over to Agricola. And then I wonder if, the marketing team at B is like, well, don't call it Beginner's Agricola, call it Family Edition.
Yeah. Which is a movement in the game industry. I mean, you see my first Stone Age, you see my first Journey on the Ticket to Ride. You see a lot of these things where they're saying, hey, what if we took a game that adults love and made it so they can play it with their family? It's a lower barrier of entry to people not familiar with gaming, and it's easier to teach children how to play these games as a stepping point to the game that it is emulating.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not just, Agricola we're seeing this with. But I personally, I think it worked well.
Yep. In regards to components and graphics, what do you guys think? I mean, it was basically like Agricola, except for the main board has a little bit different art. And it's kind of cute art, too, I mean, arguably.
Yeah. And that's where, when you were busting it out, like you mentioned, has that Kalis-esque guy marching down. But then also, so we were looking at the components, we're like, oh, hey, it has these, just like Caverna, and it has these things like that, and so there's other aspects that are familiar. So you can even use this as a jumping point to other areas, and it'll be like, oh, I recognize this art component. This is the same as this other game.
Yep.
Specifically in the Uwe farming family of games.
One of the things we did notice, and it could have just been, after lunch and whatever, but the pacing seemed to be a little bit slower. And maybe that was just because it seemed that way, right? We kind of talked about that. When comparing this to Agricola, you also have your hand of cards, your private hand of cards with occupations, minor improvements. In this game, you don't have that. Yeah. So when another person's trying to make up their mind of where they want to go, wheat or reeds or whatever, you're watching them. And that's all you're doing.
Yeah. Right?
So it seemed to go a little bit slower as a result of that because you weren't doing anything while other people are doing their own things. Anything to add to that? Or?
No, I think that ties into that pacing where it felt slower. There are just as many options as we saw in Agricola. And I think, too, especially when I play with younger players, I find they're slightly, I guess it depends on the player. Some of them, they're really AP because they want to learn and master everything. But I find a lot of the younger kids I play games with, they don't think that hard.
True.
They're just like, I want all the wood, and you're like, you're losing terribly, but have fun.
But have fun, yeah. I mean, that's what it's all
so
about.
I think part of that, too, is, we are a lot more strategical than most of the people you'd be teaching this to.
True. One interesting thing about this game is it's actually 8+, right? Ages 8 and up. I would not teach this to my nieces, I don't think.
Your nieces also aren't 8.
The eldest one is 10.
The youngest one's like 5.
Well, yeah, I mean, she would pick up the sheep and throw them at you. But the eldest, even then, I don't think her attention span would be there. I would place this more about 12+. I mean, obviously, it depends on the kid, right? If the kid's playing chess and studying Bobby Fischer, then okay, fair enough.
I mean, my kids, when they're 4, they'll be able to play this game.
That's because they're going to be biologically engineered.
That's true.
So, there's that. Anyway, last thing is replayability. What do you guys think?
I mean, honestly, for me, it's pretty high just because it is still that Agricola family.
True.
This kind of game for me is just something that I could go back to every time. So
I would actually argue that this is more replayable to me than Agricola because of the time, right? Agricola is 30 minutes per player. You play with in a 4-player game, I mean, you're 2 hours. Yeah. This is 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Arguably, I could fit this in pretty quick. It has a little bit of flavor of Kalis, a little bit of flavor of Agricola. I would be more apt to bring this to a setting where I'm unfamiliar with the different people playing.
I mean, I would say I would rather play Core Agricola than this, but I think I would get this to the table more
than
Core Agricola.
Yep,
if that makes
which
sense.
increases the replayability in my mind.
So it's I would rather play it, but this one is more playable because it's more approachable.
Yeah.
Precisely. All right, final comments?
Uwe for the win.
Uwe
Uwe
for
or
the win.
Uwe? How do you pronounce his name? Let us know in the comments below.
Yes. All right, well, that's been Agricola Family Edition. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Recording now. Get down to now.
There he is.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi-ho.